those colleges take classes there too, so it's not like I'll never see a boy, you know? And I have friends at the other schools. And a bunch of my friends, like this year, have applied to Swarthmore, which is in the consortium. So if someone goes there, it'll be hella lit. And
I went last year, and I haven't responded to the
what
email.
else? So I just wanna,
April 28th.
yeah, I just wanna take, I definitely wanna take classes at all the other schools.
I think I was being.
And I wanna go to a Villanova basketball game because it's right across the street.
Issues.
I don't know, man, like, I just wanna be empowered and kill it.
No, you are killing that. Good job. I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you. But now, yeah, but like now everything is just really mellow.
Yeah.
It's like someone will be like, oh yeah, this is due in like 4 weeks. I'll be like,
Yeah.
okay. I'll be like, it's alright. It's
Toys are here.
it's fine. It'll
Test, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, you are, God, you're awesome. You're awesome, I can pass notes. My little guys here, okay, where's all my stuff? Okay. I'm encroaching, I don't mean to, but.
We're talking about that SAT right now. And I just realized everyone just Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about our scores this year. It's just like,
She was on the clock a long time as well.
personally, and she was like, yeah, I'm so glad she took this one because there's that rule. There's a rule you can't like talk about your grades or like scores
Really?
in public. You know, it's kind of like
Just have you.
like
it's not like enforced, but it's like a thing.
it's just like an informal agreement. Like there's a social and like all the tests are like you take them home and you do them. It's very like like social and academic trust. But anyway, it's just like I'm so glad of that and to like not be in a competitive environment. My high school was so competitive, and then she goes, so just curious, what's your GPA? And then I was like, and I
That's
just
kinda
walked on
weird.
red. And it's just like, okay, GPAs are a little like.
Okay, we're going to call back into order the regular meeting of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education for Tuesday, March 13th, 2018. May we have a roll call?
But
President Black,
Here.
Vice President Stapleton Gray, Board Member Blanchard, Board Member Clark, Board Member Trutain,
here,
Student Board Member Athanayak,
Here.
Student Board Member Silwall.
here.
For those who wish to participate, we will have a pledge of allegiance. Reading of the AUSD mission and mission statement.
The mission of the Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
The board took no action in closed session. Next, the approval of the agenda. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Black. I'd like to ask the board to, under review and discussion, item number 2, to remove the memorandum of understanding between the Peralta Community College District and Albany Unified, but to still allow us to present to the board the actual program for the dual enrollment with Berkeley City College and Albany Unified. So we have a lot of information we'd like to give to the board.
Basically, we're just changing the title of that agenda item, but the agenda item is still on.
That is correct.
Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda with the one change?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have tonight a school spotlight on McGregor High School.
Thank you, and I'll turn this over to Darren McNally, who is going to do our spotlight on McGregor. Mr. McNally.
Great, thank you. Our 3 slides. This is our semi-official McGregor High School logo, which I accidentally ripped off the bulldog from Yale University, which I found out after the fact. But I haven't had time to make a new one since then, so this is what we got. So I just wanted to first of all fill in some of our new board members as well as what we do with McGregor. And McGregor's a really interesting program that we're still finding out a lot about because we sit in this really interesting space of being kind of a school within a school, of being a continuation school that really functions a lot like an alternative school within a comprehensive high school. And one of the challenges of our program is how do we make the most out of that really unique relationship that we have. And this is my second year as principal of McGregor High School, and I want to highlight some of the changes and improvements and kind of growth that we've seen this year. And I also asked a couple of our faculty members to come and talk about their experiences with McGregor and Albany High School, and kind of talk about some of our hopes for the future as well. And one of the big improvements that we have had this year is we have our own classroom now on the AHS campus. And so we have one room that's ours instead of having to share classrooms with Albany High School, and that's given us a lot of freedom to set up the classroom in a way that much better serves a lot of our students because we try to keep our class sizes a lot smaller, so we have a lot more space that is our own. We've also made some improvements to the flex office space to make it much more open and inviting for students and families and other people. We've also focused on creating a much more cohesive staff culture because part of creating a more cohesive community for our students is creating a more cohesive community for our teachers. And so part of that is that we actually have fewer teachers so that we can work together. And we actually have a lot more meetings and a lot more collaboration. And McGregor actually has a lot more informal meeting time. And there's a lot of things that in a lot of places have big procedures. With us, we all just get together. And we've really focused as a group this year on creating a team atmosphere where instead of asking ourselves, what's our job with this student, or what's our job here, or what's our form here, focusing much more on what is our relationship with our students and how do we use that to really help our students be successful. Julie, you want to just flip to the next slide? I just want to highlight a couple of the things that we've done, and here's a couple images. So we actually took a field trip with all McGregor to the Exploratorium this year that was actually very, very successful. And our students have actually asked for an overnight field trip. We're not too sure if that's actually a direction we're going to go. But this year, one of the really big improvements and one of the things I've been really proud to see is that the Bulldog identity, being a McGregor student and being a McGregor teacher, is much stronger now. And one of the things that I've really hoped we could do more of as a school is create that sense that we're not just a school, but we're really a community and a family and a way to support all the different social emotional needs of our students. One of the things we've found is a lot of our students, it's not so much that they're not smart. In many ways, actually, there's some incredibly intelligent people who are part of McGregor. It's a sense of belonging and a feeling of fitting in that's often much more of their need. There's also a picture there of our McGregor faculty. And one change from last year is instead of having 2 different social studies teachers, we have one social studies teacher as both classes. And so we have a smaller, more cohesive staff that's able to meet much more frequently, which is something I'm really happy about. And it's much easier for us to work together. This is the most cohesive team I've ever worked in, kind of in my 10 years in education, coming from a big comprehensive high school. And then in the bottom quarter is actually just some of our students who graduated last year. Some of our students that we're really proud of, and a lot of them come back to check in with us. Julie, you want to pop to the next slide? So I asked everyone, I kind of wanted to come with 3 questions to just kind of frame for us and our own sense of what McGregor is. And I think I answered a little bit of question 1. Question 2, I just want to, for myself, one of the real advantages to McGregor is that we're smaller and that we focus a lot more on trying to meet those individual needs of students. And I'll just say the last one, some of my hopes for McGregor, I'm actually hoping we can add more elective options. And I'm hoping that we can do a lot more in the future to meet a lot of the individual needs of our students and how to meet their requirements for graduation and things like that. And it's a question the team and I have started to approach is what are some ways to actually leverage the personalized one-on-one approach of McGregor to better serve some of our students. Annie J, you want to come up and talk about your McGregor experience as well?
Hi, I'm Annie J. Fishberg. I'm a teacher at Albany High School and McGregor High School. I taught at Mac last year and this year, so it's fun to sort of see the 2 years in comparison. These are the first time I'm seeing these questions. I sort of heard about them earlier today. So I think one of the things that I really love about Mac is that it is really small. I have 9 students in my Mac math class, and so it's just incredibly easy to talk to every single student every single day. What do you need? What are you doing? How is it going? How is your life? How is the math work? And it's incredibly powerful to be able to really build those individual relationships in a way that it's much harder to do when you have 32 students in a room. And so I guess that's one of the ways that it's different and also an advantage. And my hopes for McGregor in the future, I really am excited about this cohesive team that we have this year. I feel like there's a way in which if I'm noticing something with a student and that I'm worried about or that I'm excited about, we have this team that I can meet with and I can talk to and I can say, hey, how are they doing in your class? And what have you found that helps them? What have you found that they need? And it's just so easy to share strategies and share ideas and create more like a support network rather than a whole bunch of individual teachers doing our thing in our classroom. So it's a really fun team to be on, and it's a really awesome place to work. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Diane Peterson. I'm the counselor. I would say that McGregor is different from Albany High School in that we really, at McGregor, get to know the whole child. I would say almost more in a way of an elementary school classroom where you're really getting to know who the person, where the kids are coming from, having personal relationships, conversations with them, and that really helps drive my work to help them get to their goals. And that's been something that is really special about McGregor. And the advantages are that we're a small team, and as Annie J was saying, we really can put our heads together about individual students. We have the time. That's one thing I notice from being at McGregor for many years on our own and then moving up to Albany High is we at McGregor, we just have time. And teachers at Albany High, you have 1,200 kids. There's just not the time, and it's really, I feel really fortunate to be able to have that. I would echo what Darren said. I would love to see the return of an elective for McGregor. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but Alexia actually started the culinary program at McGregor and piloted it, and I know that our kids would really love to have a dedicated class. Thank you.
I guess that's our quick preview. Do you have any questions for us about
Questions?
McGregor or the Bulldogs?
Charlie?
This is probably more of a comment than a question, but I can remember a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, there was some discussion as to what is McGregor High? Is it an alternative high school or is it a continuation high school? And I remember someone who had more experience with McGregor than I did, reminding us at that time that initially McGregor High was designated as a necessary small school. And I think that's probably a good way of looking at it. You know, it's necessary. It has a great function. It serves some students really well, and some students thrive in a small school. So I think of it that way. It's a necessary small school. I'm also reminded that when Mac High got started, it was meeting in a couple of leaky portables on Cougar Field, so I think you're doing better now. And I think I would just add that my own experience is that we hosted a senior one year who graduated from McGregor High, and this is a student who was and is smart and talented. I don't know that the high school diploma would have been earned had it not been for McGregor High. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Others? Kim?
Yeah. I remember you coming to speak to us last year, and one thing that you said was good about being co-located at AHS was the fact that many of the students took some Albany High classes and some McGregor classes. Do you know, are all of them doing that, or what percentage do you think are taking classes at both schools?
Almost all of our students are taking classes at both. There's a few special cases where that's not true, but almost all of them are doing both. One of the things that we've thought about is that because of some different rules about attendance time and things like that, that we'd also would like to, it's not that we have a problem with our students taking Albany High classes, but we actually offer a lot more flexibility for students who want to do community college or work experience or things like that. And so we looked at expanding that as well. But to answer your question specifically, most of our students do both because McGregor does the core 4, math, science, English, social studies. So students who need electives or other courses like that take them through Albany High School at the moment.
Thank you.
Great. Navin?
Sure. So how does a student begin school at McGregor? Like, I'm familiar with some students transferring in because of grade issues and stuff like that, but how exactly does this process work?
There's a referral process through the student's counselor.
Yeah.
And then we kind of have the conversation with the counselor about, what are these students' needs? Are these needs that can be well met by the environment that we have at McGregor? And then that's essentially how it happens, is referral.
All right. Thank you.
Ross?
So I'm very conflicted because I think if we went out and talked to any teacher and said, if we could give you class size 9, would that be better than what you have today? They say absolutely. Could we have a better outcome for any kid at the high school putting them through class size of 12 rather than 30? Absolutely. And so, we're making a trade-off. We're saying for this purpose, for this particular need, we need to do this. I worry that we're squeezing the balloon, so it's inflating over there as we squeeze it over here, and say we're losing kids who are fine academically, but not as challenged as they need to be, and therefore, and so we lose them. I know families who I thought were very committed to public education in Albany, whose kids are at St. Mary's, or who are at private school, or who are struggling to figure out how to supplement what they're doing also at Albany High. So we have this issue. There's not enough money at all. We're doing one of the things that can solve one of our problems, and that's necessarily at sort of cost to other things we want to do. So you don't take students before they're 16.
It's ed code.
It's ed code because you are not an alternative high school.
Yeah, because we're a continuation school. Yeah.
So we as a district could, in fact, create an alternative high school. We could say, well, some of these kids, rather than wait till they're 16 and sort of running off the rails, are there kids who could use an alternative education? And that's an open question, not for tonight, but an open question for the board of, do we need to be more flexible in our educational structures? Have an alternative high school, expand, relationships with community colleges, online education, change the school day, et cetera, et cetera. We should keep all these things open. And it's the last thing, if you've got a great functioning team, can you sort of infect others at the high school? Are there lessons to be taken? In some discussions with teachers, my elder daughter went to a private school. They had a dean of faculty. There was a sort of an apex of the community of teachers. And I think that did an awful lot towards helping the teachers amongst themselves talk about education and process and structure. They also had a dean of students, which I think did an awful lot towards making it easier for students to talk to teachers or talk to adults. And so any lessons you're encountering that ought to be sort of spread, please do.
Yeah, I don't want to take the spotlight off McGregor too much, but one of the things that I actually insisted on when I took this position was that all of the McGregor teachers also be Albany High School teachers. That wasn't the case in the past. And that was because I think there's actually a lot of valuable lessons in McGregor for all teachers. And that's one of the reasons why all of our McGregor teachers are full-time faculty members, split between Albany High School and McGregor. And we, myself, Diane, and our whole staff is split between both schools, both programs. We kind of view us as one part of a continuum of ways to support students. And I think that there are a lot of great lessons for Albany High School and Albany Middle School in McGregor, definitely.
Okay, so just for the record, I've brought this up before. I think we have other, or I should say additional ways at the high school for credit recovery, and that we have a greater need for an alternative school than a continuation school, and we have freshmen and sophomores who would benefit from McGregor who can't get in right now. So I would love to have that conversation and see if we can't move that forward. Mahima, did you want to say something? No? Charlie?
It may be one thing we could find out. If I recall correctly, there's a funding stream associated with continuation high schools. And as I indicated before, rather than thinking of it as a continuation high school, if we thought of it as a necessary small school and thought about what it was we wanted to accomplish with our necessary small school, that would be a way of setting up goals for ourselves that weren't necessarily budget-based goals, but I would like to know what that funding stream actually is.
It's all incorporated in the local control funding formula, and so we generate funding from the attendance, but it's not the program is not restricted to that funding that's received.
So it's not additional money, it's just ADA. So,
So we don't actually receive extra funding because it's a continuation high school.
No.
Is there any advantage to it being designated as a continuation high school? I think at one time there was a financial advantage, but that's no longer, so.
I believe there is an ed code provision about you have to have a continuation school if your graduating senior class is above 100 students.
Okay.
I believe. But I would love to have this discussion about kind of creating the environments to serve our students as well as
Yeah.
possible.
great, thank you.
Oh,
Sure.
I just wanted, you maybe are already aware that in Piedmont, their alternative/continuation school is Millennium, and they actually have figured out a way, they do 9th through 12th grade, continuation students and alternative students in the same classes, and the counselor just works individually with each student and puts them on whichever track they're on.
Great, so we could talk to Piedmont and
Yeah.
find out how they did it. Terrific, thank you. Well, thanks very much for your highlight on McGregor.
thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone who wants to comment on or pull any items on the consent calendar? Kim?
I just want to comment on page 7, overnight field trip Albany High School to National Ocean Science Bowl finals in Boulder, Colorado. It says under background information details, NOSB is funding the costs of the airfare and hotel accommodations for 3 nights at the event for the students attending. That was so refreshing to read that because I've never seen that before. And especially for athletics, when you get into the regionals or when you get into the state, you can families often have very short warning, and then there's a hotel and airfare to buy, and it can mean an expense of $500, $800 with the notice of just a few weeks, which can be a real burden on our families. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the National Ocean Sciences Bowl for supporting the students financially as well as through this whole program.
Thanks. I believe Albany came in first in the nation in that bowl at least once.
Monaco, right?
And they got a trip, all expenses paid trip to Monaco.
Wow.
An international, it wasn't to gamble, it was for an international convention on ocean sciences.
Awesome.
Anything else? Can we, any comments from the audience on the consent calendar? We have a motion on the consent calendar.
I move we pass the consent calendar.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Board and Superintendent Report.
Thank you, President Black. At the last board meeting, I reported that I was going to Sacramento to meet with the joint Senate and legislative subcommittees on education and funding, specifically to advocate for increased special education funding. So on the February 28th, I went to that hearing, and I learned a lot. It was a 3-hour hearing. There were 2 panels, and the panels consisted of 2 California State Department of Education members, teachers, paraprofessionals, advocates, and if you can imagine the state office, there's all the senators and legislators are on these subcommittees, and they kind of come in and go out. They kind of flow in and out. At the end of the presentation, the public is allowed to speak, and I got a whopping 90 seconds to talk about Albany and our need and how Albany would benefit from increased special education funding and what the detriments would be if we did not. So on the screen there, as I promised a parent at the last meeting, I promised some contact information. And on the back of the table, there are several documents. One of them is a packet that talks about, from the California School Funding Coalition, the letters of support that are needed. And it says by Wednesday, March 14th, but I think that they would take them a little bit later. So what you see are 6 local politicians. I am encouraging parents to write letters. Whether you write individual letters, whether you write a group letter and have 100 parents sign, I think that would be great. One thing I heard very clearly from everybody who was in this committee that was up on the dais is that when parents of students with special needs and when teachers write letters of support, you get the attention of our legislators. And I believe that there could possibly be 3 bills written. I don't know if they're spot bills or trailer bills. I'm still learning the difference between the 2. But what I do know is this, after going to several meetings, I really think that we have a good chance of getting the state to fund more money for special education. And so, again, we're Albany, we're small but mighty, and I'm going to do everything I can, no matter how tiny we are, to have our voice be heard. And so that's my report, and I'm going to let Member Trutain talk about what happened today, if you'd like. That's my report. Thank you.
Kim?
Today was the California School Board Association's Legislative Action Day. Superintendent Williams and I traveled to Sacramento, where we met with Tony Thurmond, Assemblymember Tony Thurmond, and his staff, and we met with staff of Senator Nancy Skinner. I think that what was the most exciting to me about the day is that we were told in the mornings that there were 200 school board members that had come to Sacramento, and our main agenda item was to push for full and fair funding. So all over the state, districts are in dire financial straits. This offloading of the pension costs to the districts has caused us to go into a financial tailspin, and school board members are really fighting to find the funds and to raise the level of the base grant that we get per student so that we can keep our districts afloat and so we can keep all of our teachers and so we can keep our class sizes as small as possible. So I was happy to hear that, and I think it was a productive day.
Thank you.
On that list, Lonnie Hancock is no longer serving in the legislature, right? I believe Nancy Skinner took that seat.
There's 2 District 9s there, yeah.
Yes, I will take that off. Actually, I think what I was supposed to put in there was Barbara Lee in there, so that's also on the website. But yeah, I can.
Barbara Lee is
she
there.
down there? Oh, she is. Okay, I'll take. We can take Senators Lonnie Heincuck off.
Okay, yesterday, we had the 2x2x2 meeting. That's where the City of Albany, the Albany Unified School District, and University of California at Berkeley all meet to discuss common items of interest. We learned that the Albany Police Chief will be visiting the Traffic and Safety Committee in April to discuss when a crossing guard is warranted at intersections, so they can determine how many crossing guards we really need. And the city budget in June is when the funding of crossing guards will be discussed. It'll be just, yeah. In November, the city will be putting a parcel tax on the ballot, which is why we're not putting one on this November. And the city council will be considering ranked choice voting at their meeting on the 19th. Anything else?
Paul, can you repeat the date that they're going to be getting the report on school crossing guards? I thought that was...
It's in April. I don't know what the date is. I didn't get the date. At the Traffic and Safety Commission.
Oh, I thought that the city council, I can double check. I thought the city council was also going to discuss at this next city council meeting, but that, I can check the agenda.
Oh, okay. The specific thing was that the police chief would be at the Traffic and Safety in April.
Okay. I could be in error again.
That's all I
Okay,
have.
thank you.
Student board member report.
There will be a community-wide white elephant and bake sale on Sunday, March 25th from noon to 3 p.m. at the Four Corners Room in the University Village Community Center. Come by and donate goods from 10 through 11:30 at the Four Corners Room to help Albany's Ocean View teachers buy more supplies for their students.
The annual sock hop will be this Friday, March 23rd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Ocean View Multipurpose Room. There will be a crazy otter sock contest, otter trail dance contest, and much more.
Also this Friday is Albany High School's annual Spring Fling. We are looking for more teacher volunteers and chaperones, so if you'd like to help, please feel free to come.
Cornell will be hosting a walkout/hug around the school on March 14th in unity with victims/students of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
The Pink Squad, a student-organized 5th grade group, will be hosting a bake sale on Thursday, March 15th at 2:15 p.m. All of the money raised will be to support the Noyer Association and Rabbit Ears.
There are 2 weeks until the Moonlight Auction, which will be held on March 24th from 6 to 10 p.m. You won't want to miss this fun-filled, adult-only important fundraiser for the Marin School. The Moonlight Auction is the PTA's largest fundraiser, and you can buy tickets by March 23rd for $30 a person and buy tickets at the door for $40 per person.
Albany High will have a school-sanctioned walkout tomorrow during advisory for 17 minutes to honor the victims of the Parkland shooting. After that, there will be a student-led protest at Memorial Park, which will not be school-sanctioned.
That concludes the student board member report.
Okay, we can note that all 3 elementaries will have some observance March 14th, and the middle school will also have a school-sanctioned walkout on the Cougar Field at the same time. So I think probably there'll be a large cordon of police to keep the middle school students away from the high school students, because we don't want the high school students embarrassed by being beat up by the middle school students. But anyway, all the schools will be observing the 17 minutes tomorrow. Any other comments or questions for the students? Audience? Thank you. Persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We have a staff report on promoting safe, supportive, and collaborative environments for all students and staff.
Thank you, President Black. Trustees, I'm going to turn this over to our Director of Student Services, Karen Nierheim, who's going to provide our update.
Good evening, President Black and our board. It's been such an honor getting to learn about Albany and our community and our schools, and so I'm kind of continuing my journey of learning about our great school district, and tonight I want to focus and highlight on Albany Middle School's Unity Week. I got the opportunity. I was very disappointed. I wanted to go and watch one of the lessons that was going to be presented, and I had too much work, and I couldn't go. But I did get to participate in, or not participate, but observe something really exciting that I'll share in a little bit. So Unity Week is an annual tradition at the middle school. Do you mind? Thank you. What is Unity Week? It's a week of activities and lessons to promote not only unity and kindness, but also diversity at the middle school. And in light of last board meeting's presentation about what I learned at the Museum of Tolerance and the 4 main components of identity, diversity, justice, and action, I think that these types of activities bring attention to the need to promote diversity. And that which gets seen gets done. And I think it's quite a testament to our schools that they're willing not only to do fun activities, which they were fun and they were great, but there's also lessons in the classroom on these topics. And I think that speaks volumes about what our priorities are, that we're not just paying lip service to this, but that we're willing to take dedicated classroom time to talk about this. On the fun side, they did have contests, and our T-shirt designer was Jasmine Jadashian, and I just want to show the shirt.
Cool. That's gorgeous.
Isn't it great? I'm the proud owner of this one. And they had a poetry slam, and then again, the lessons happened during ELA, math, science, and history. And in addition to that, Julie, can you scooch me? Thank you. They had a full schedule. And if you'll notice that on Wednesday, that's when I got to observe the compliment battle, which was epic. So I arrived at lunchtime, all the students were coming in, they had a DJ playing music, kids were having a great time, but then came the compliment battle. And it was their first time doing it. I checked in with Stacy Yuta today, and I said I thought it went really well, and she said, yeah, I think it went really well for the first time. But students came to the mic and dropped epic compliments on other contenders, and it was pretty fantastic. The thing that impressed me the most during that time was how many staff members were present just to observe, just to be there. Not necessarily for supervision, but just to watch their students having a great time. I actually went up to the second floor, and there was a counselor and an instructional assistant and one of the teachers, and they were just there to watch the kids have fun. And that again speaks volumes when you have your staff participating in these types of activities that they are not required to be, but they want to be a part of. It's a great sense of community. And then finally, they had lesson plans in a shared folder that were designed. Again, I was disappointed that I wasn't able to go in and observe one of the lessons, but I did check out the videos that were provided. All of them were great. My favorite kid president, I'm just a fan, and the 20 things we should say more often, things like please, thank you, you're awesome. So it was a great week, and I'm just really impressed that the middle school takes this amount of time to celebrate unity and diversity at their site. And that's my report.
Thank you. That's a great thing. One, this is very minor, but we have a no acronym rule, and ELA is English Language Arts.
I apologize. I promise it won't happen again.
But do we have any comments or questions from the board? from the audience.
My understanding is that these are the classes in which the lessons are done. So it's during one of these periods they will get access to this lesson. Thank you.
Sorry, Mahima?
Well, I'm actually kind of new to Albany, so I just didn't know that this existed. But seeing and
Me
hearing,
too.
seeing and hearing about all of this has gotten me really excited because, at the high school, spring is a really busy time, especially for upperclassmen. But we do have the International Food Day, where the clubs, bring all these foods and stuff, and then we have the Diversity Assembly, and all of the language classes do like dances. And I've always been thinking, how can we make this more proactive and something that isn't just about like a 2-minute dance and then we go on and it's just, we forget about it. And I think hearing about all of these different ideas and how we can have lesson plans in the classroom, though that might be harder to sort of implement at the high school level, I think a week-long sort of activity would be a really good idea, at the high school level and also the elementary school level. So I'd love to see more of this. This is very exciting, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a special education update.
Thank you, President Black. Trustees, for the special education update, I want to turn this over to our Director of Special Education, Diane Marie.
And I might as well say right off the bat, I broke the acronym rule, and I do apologize. I used SDC for special day class, and on the last page, I used AMS and AHS, and that's for the middle and the high school. On the first page, this is just a review of attendance and if the attendance was covered. The first page indicates that our Albany Children's Center has relatively good attendance. The small numbers sort of skew it in January. We had, during the entire month of January, 2 absences. Only one of them was covered. So while it says we have 50% attendance, it's really not that. It's really that one para was not there. The next page is Cornell. And again, you'll see small numbers skewing some of the results, such as December for our special day class. During the entire month of December, 1 person was out. We didn't have a sub. Therefore, it was a 0% coverage. And similar in the inclusion program in January and February and September. Marin continues to have pretty stable attendance. Again, December and January in our special day class. We had 1 para out in each of those months, and we did not have a sub on either of the days. Ocean View. Shows similar results. They have pretty good attendance. One thing that this doesn't take into consideration is the number of paras and how many work at each site and how many days that actually represents. That was data that was presented last month. So, for example, if there are a dozen paras and 20 work days in the month, I guess that would be 240 possible paras being present. The middle school is the next slide, and shows that attendance continues to be somewhat of a concern at the middle school, and that subs continue to be insufficient to meet our needs. We also, something that's contributed to particularly the middle school and the high school attendance rates are the fact that we have had 8 long-term leaves of paras this school year. 2 of those are from the elementary and 6 being from the high school. And that really impacts the number of people out and our ability to cover those positions. We do continue to interview as soon as we get applications. And the next is our high school. And in August, the rate is 67%. I did not input that. So it is 67%. We also have an adult transition program. That's very small, but we do have 2 paraeducators supporting that program. And the attendance rates are not bad. Again, they're skewed by the fact that if we don't put a para in to cover, it makes it look like it's a 0%, which in essence it is. In December, 1 person was out and we didn't have coverage. This is a class that's behind our middle school, and it's for our 18 to 22-year-old students with moderate to severe disabilities. And the students are in the house that used to be lived in by our caretaker, and when that position wasn't filled, the special education department took over the building and made archways out of the bedroom doorways and offices and classrooms. And it's a really neat program because the children have, or the students, the young adults, have a full kitchen, a laundry, and they can practice a lot of the daily living skills. They also all go to jobs. They spend a lot of time in the community, and they spend 2 half-days a week taking classes at a local community college, classes for students with disabilities.
So Diane Marie, my understanding is that we have 2 floating paraprofessional positions that are hired, and are they covering?
If we go up to the next slide,
Okay.
and my last slide, substitute information, we do have 2 floating paraeducators, and both of those positions are filled. And those individuals typically are put into our long-term positions so that we have consistency. When we have someone out for a month or 2 months or 6 months, we wouldn't be substituting somebody different every day. In addition, we have added, since the last board report, 1 substitute. And I'm not sure why we have a little issue with the margins, because when I printed it out, it looked just fine. But we do have 15 subs. However, many of them have limitations. 3 of them, any site. However, a couple will only work at elementary. A couple won't work at the middle school. 1 will only work at Marin. 1 is a Friday-only person. And the limited hours, oh, okay, I see what it is. 3 have limited hours, and then 1 will work 4 days a week and also has limited hours. That limited hours got kind of messed up. And 2 of our 15 are currently on long-term hiatuses. They don't want to work for a bit. They told us they would let us know when they did want to work. That said, one other thing that is not on here and has absolutely nothing to do with the paras, I found out late this afternoon that we have been able to find a teacher to fill a position at the middle school that was vacated in February, the end of February. So we were able to locate a credentialed, mild to moderate teacher, and can start as soon as she can. We'd like her to start. And that is that.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Questions? Russ?
A question is on how I read these charts. So to go, say, to the Albany High one. So in September, 48 paras out, available subs 26%, cover 24. Is 48 the number of para days?
No, 48 is the total number of paras who were absent, the total number of days that paras were absent.
Okay, so if it were, say, 6 paras absent for
8 days?
Created a bad math problem.
Yes.
8 days each, yes. So it's hard for me to know what's going on absent knowing like the total number of days obligated and the total number of paras overall. You know, if you're telling me that, say, there are 4 absences, 2 of which are covered, that's 50%, but that could be out of 100 hours, and that's...
Correct. And that is where it gets a little bit confusing. Last week, or last February 27th board meeting, that information was presented. And then I was asked to bring information about, okay, so those are the number who were out, but the high school 48 would represent, I don't know, I don't do math in my head that well anymore, I'm getting old. I think we have 6 paras, and we do have long-term leaves, as you can see, for the 48, the 53, the 48. We do have people on long-term leaves.
So for September, if there were 6 paras at the high school, 48 paras out means that 8 days per para on average they weren't there, of which we covered 26 of those para days. So we are in arrears 22 para days in the month of September. I mean, that's the number that really ought to be presented, is the how far did we miss the mark by? And what is a percentage of overall para days that we're obligated to provide, and what's the consequence of us having so missed? I mean, what happens if there is less than full coverage of a special day class?
A number of things. Sometime, I mean, it all depends too. If a student is out that needs a one-to-one, that student will get, or that para will get moved into a program. It means that there are less people there to supervise the students. If a student has an individual para, then they will pull from the resource program, and then perhaps there won't be a paraeducator in the resource lab providing support. It will just be the teacher that day. I mean.
Kim?
Okay, so I tried to do some of this math to get some of these numbers. So it looks like to me that at Cornell, Marin, and Ocean View, our elementaries, that there were a total of 43 uncovered para days. And that's K through 5, so that's a number of grades. At the middle school, I came up with 197, and at the high school, I came up with 109. Now, at the high school, that's there's 4 classes there, 9 through 12. So there's more students at the high school than at the middle school. It seems like the attendance problem is really focused at the middle school. So for those 3 grades, if it were comparable absence rate to the elementary schools, you would think that there would only have been about 20 absences, para days not covered. But actually there were closer to 200 para days not covered at the middle school. So it sure looks like we need to, we still have a problem that we need to address.
Jacob?
Yeah, I had a question about the last page. Would you mind going to the substitute information last page?
Yes.
So under the, currently we have 15 paraeducator subs, the left side.
Yes.
Is it so hard to find para subs that they'll tell us these are the only places we're going to work?
Yes, it is.
It really is? Okay. And then,
Some of them don't, well, some of them don't feel comfortable with middle school and high school kids, so they want to stay at the elementary. And some of them might work at a site doing something for a little bit of time, therefore they can be a para for the rest of the time, and that's why they choose a specific site.
okay, and then on the right side where it talks about certain para subs will only work certain days or they'll only work certain hours, is that by their choice or is that what you're offering them?
No, 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 we want them every day for as many hours as they will. But
No,
some of the.
you're saying for the person, for example, who says I'll work 3 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
that's all they're available for?
Yes, that's all they're available for.
So it really is hard to fill these spots. I mean, 'cause just looking at this, it's kind of surprising that, I could see why we're having issues if people are saying, I only want to work 4 days a week, or I only want to work on Friday, or I only want to work at a certain school. Is it just like that in general? I mean, is it?
It is. It is like that, and it's like that in all of the schools at our SELPA. It's just kind of critical. The reason, I was asked once, if somebody will only work 1 day, why do we allow that? And my answer is, 1 day is better than no days.
Right.
And this, some of the people who only give us limited days, that's because they are professional jobs and they want to volunteer. And because they can't volunteer in the classroom, they actually go through all of the hiring process to do what they consider a community service, a public service, so that they can come and give us 1 day. And I'll take it. I wish that there were 100 more that would give 1 day, because that would give us a lot more people.
Mr. Clark, I've asked our SELPA director, I don't know if the board would like our SELPA director to come and talk about what is happening in the SELPA in terms of being able to hire paraprofessionals. We have 5 districts in our SELPA. I didn't know if the board would be interested in that. If not, I could probably bring you some information, or have Diane Marie bring information if the board wishes.
Yeah, I know funds are limited and this and that, but if there's a way that we can try to attract more people, I don't know if we're competitive to neighboring districts, but that might be part of it, where people are saying that they'll only do certain things because maybe they don't feel they're being compensated.
I know that we're lower than Berkeley, but that's because Berkeley's minimum wage is higher than ours. So they moved it to correspond with their minimum wage. And I did talk to Katie Babcock, our SELPA director, yesterday, and she said that she would be honored to come and present about how our numbers and what we're going through compares to the other districts, not only in our SELPA, but from what she hears when she goes to her SELPA meetings that have SELPA directors from all over California. So
We could have
I would be
her-
interested. No, I'd love to hear.
We could have her come as part of our staff report. It would probably be maybe not this next board meeting, because I did want to report at the next special ed update some of the results I got from all the meetings that I've had. But maybe the one after that,
Okay,
which
I'll
would
talk
be
to her.
probably the first meeting in April.
Okay. Do we have any?
So thank you for presenting the numbers. I think it helps us get a fix on what the dimensions of the problem might be. So thank you, appreciate that. I think I noticed the same thing Kim did, which is pretty consistent with what we've been told. The numbers tell the same story for Albany Middle School, standing out in terms of the availability of paras and subs. So my gut tells me this is a big impact. If I look at something like 197 slots not covered, that seems like a big impact to me. So maybe that's all we need to know, is that there, I guess whatever percentage that is, it feels to me like there's hardly a day that goes by where there's probably not an impact, just if you've got that many going on. Jacob asked about subs. Of course, the other part of that is just the absences, that there are a lot of days when people are just not able to come into work. I think we'd probably welcome any suggestions or recommendations you might have for how we tackle that. We don't have to talk about it right now, but it seems to me that the subs is, the availability of the subs is sort of the second level. The first level is the fact that we have a large number of days when a sub is needed.
That is accurate. And that's something that when I met with the different groups of paraeducators that we discussed, and ideas that they had. Of course, one would be money, and two would be a systematic training So those are things that I talked about 2 or 3 board member meetings ago.
Okay, I think we have some members of the audience who want to speak.
I just wanted to know, is there any way for on the next report to actually have a combination of from what the director of special ed services did in January when it was, this is the site, this is how many people we have compared to students? I think you did something like either it's a 4-to-2 or 3-to-1 or something like that, but the actual numbers and then plus the ones that you did here. So that way, as a parent, you can kind of see, well, for example, Marin has, these positions available, this amount, to these many total number of kids, and this is how many we have in the pool, because it seems like it's 3 different reports, but can you put it together in one? Because I would definitely want to know if when my child gets to the middle school, if they have a resource, then how many people are going to be, available? So I wouldn't be surprised knowing, oh, well, when they say I didn't have this or there wasn't a sub available, that I'll have to find out in the latter. So if you're going to give information, I just suggest maybe kind of giving it all together, so it's more like an update for the parents, so they don't have to find out, your children don't tell you stuff like usually that day. Sometimes it's delayed and you find out like 2 or 3 weeks later. So then when, if you present it now or all together or as it's happening or even just the past month, I think for parents would be a lot easier to have that more present and fresh information, especially for updates, for parents who actually physically can't come here, but have that available maybe in the packet, or that they can email you or be available someplace so somebody can see what's currently going on. Thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion.
Hello. I wanted to thank the board for continuing to work on this, and thank the district for continuing to work on this and bring it to every meeting, and there seems to be being some progress made, so I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. A few comments. It seems like the reporting so far has been a little bit, and I think that was sort of expressed a little bit sort of disjointed, and we're not kind of working towards a comprehensive kind of like overall state of special education report. And the reason I bring it up in particular is because one of the things that was very apparent at the first meeting where this topic was sort of broached at the board level, it seemed very clear that there was some kind of a breakdown somewhere in, the fact that people were coming, teachers were coming, general education teachers, parents were coming and saying, hey, there is a problem. Well, why did it have to get to that? And so from a longer term perspective, like what can the board put in place so that it doesn't have to get to that in the future? I don't know enough about what kind of reporting already happens at that kind of departmental level to the board, or not on an annual basis or semi or something, but where, hey, this is how we evaluate the performance of this department, and here are the numbers, and I don't know what those numbers were. I think maybe we could ask for the district, or maybe with the aid of this help, to start. What's a good framework? What's a framework for us to evaluate special education in Albany? I don't really know. I don't know that the board knows either, but that's a step we could say, hey, what's a good framework for evaluating this, and then start to fill it out. It's going to be full of holes, and we can then work on developing the mechanisms to collect that information, and then have something that future boards can have and say, okay, now I know how special education's doing, and we know that it's okay. I think that's the gist of what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ritchie, Albany Middle School teacher, resource specialist. First of all, thank you, Ms. Marie, for splitting these numbers out, SDC to RS. I think it's telling, and it's something that we've been saying for a while, and I appreciate the board acknowledging that the middle school seems to have a challenge. All our teachers are working very hard everywhere in the entire district. And I'm going to speak for myself because I don't want to speak for anybody else, but that's okay. I've been there 12 years. And I think maybe to answer Kim's question, the middle school had more slots or more absences, I guess, right? And I think what we're seeing is middle school is the time, it's a pressure cooker. It's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. These students have never had grades before. They've had marks in elementary school, which are important, but now they're under the gun. And their parents are seeing an A, a B, a C, a D, and there's a lot of pressure on teachers and on the special ed system to support that. And so that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that's where it is. In 7th grade, you really start to see the separation of, multiple teachers, more different expectations, kids are struggling. That's kind of a natural break, if you will. So to answer your question, I think that's why when kids get to high school, they've been through 3 years of that conditioning and that support from all teachers, general ed, special ed, paraprofessionals, and they've also done what? Matured, right? That's a huge piece of this. Boy, we spend so much energy chasing around that elusive maturity thing, and I see kids who in 7th and 8th grade who I see in 11th grade, and they're like looking me in the eye and talking to me like a young adult. I'm like, wow, I remember you when you were in 7th grade. And I'm like, wow, it does work, But the point is, those 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th, is a huge transition. So big. And so that's one of the issues, I think, that we all need to, acknowledge. The other thing I'd like to get some clarity from Ms. Marie, if possible, when you're saying subs, available subs here, is that pure subs, meaning substitutes, or is that pulling from resource as a sub?
Dan, you need to speak into a microphone.
Sorry.
It can be any microphone.
Those would be the individuals that my office calls, which does make the information somewhat inaccurate. For example, that might not have been 100% covered. If we have a resource class that has 5, 6 students in it, a teacher and 2 paras, then we might pull a para from that class and put the para somewhere else, and then it's just less for that teacher, less support. But it kind of spreads things out, which also creates a lot of stress and tension and all of that.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. You're right. There's still a kind of a missing piece here, and that is that, first of all, like I have 3 labs, and 2 of my labs don't have paras. And yeah, I have 5 students, but some of them are very challenging. So really where those are coming from when we're pulling those resource aids, they're coming out of the general education classes. And just to give you kind of put a face, and I know I got a little time here, this is my daily sheet that's 3 pages long of all my resource paras. So when a para is out, that affects 16 students in one day, in one class. And another pair is 9 students, another pair is 12 students, another pair is 13 students. So let's put some, faces to this. It's not just numbers. And as I think Mr. Gray was saying, there's this whole days thing, and is it 6 paras times so many hours? I mean, yeah, it's kind of a challenge, but I think we're making progress here, at least to identify. And then just to answer Mr. Clark's question, I did a little search myself, and pairs are getting paid $23 an hour with benefits down in the South Bay. We're like nowhere near that. I think the lowest I saw was $19 an hour around us with benefits. And I think somebody asked what the idea was. Well, we've presented some ideas, which I know have to go through the para union and all that. But, you know, give them full shifts, up-level their job, right? They're a valued member of our team. Full shifts, and of course, pay and all that wonderful stuff. And then maybe we can attract people who don't want to work just 2 days a week, or substitutes that say, I'm going to work for Albany instead of going over here and making 10 more bucks an hour or something, right? So I know it's not an easy solution, but you know, I think that we're getting there. And one last thing, thank you for the time. Ms. Williams, I think last time we had a parent up here and you were talking about the Senate bill and all that, and that you said you were, I believe, if I'm misquoting, please correct me, that you were going to put a letter out to the community, all of Albany Unified, to talk about our challenges of special education.
Yes, and there is, first of all, it's not out to the community yet. I had to get to that and also to this one. There are sample letters in the back of the room. I'm going to have that put on the district website. One of the challenges that we're having is that the bills that, I guess if I make sure I say this correctly, I don't think the bills have been authored yet. So if people are going to write letters right now for special education funding to a specific bill, we have to wait till the bill comes out. However, I don't think that precludes our parents or our teachers or staff or any of us from writing letters that says to our local politicians, we know that there was this education subcommittee that's meeting, and I do believe they're going to meet again, and we want you to take these bills seriously. We want you to fully fund special education. When I spoke at the my whole 90 seconds that I got, I clearly put some numbers to how much of the percentage our general fund funds special education costs and what the dollar amount is, and that if we don't get special education funding, how that affects all of our kids, how it affects counselors, nurses, school psychologists, social workers. We talk about educating the whole child. What does that $2 million mean? So I think we can do a letter campaign, but right now I have not seen any of those bills come forward. The only bill that I know has come forward are the ones that I'm presenting tonight with the resolutions. So as soon as those come out and we can do the resolutions, I can get that on the website. We'll have to maybe I'll build a section that says, I don't know, advocacy for special ed or something where parents can write letters. But there are some sample letters in the back. It's more towards the Morisuchi bill and the full funding bill.
Right.
But I think it could easily be tweaked to fully fund special education costs.
Okay, so what you're saying is the letter that you're going to put out to AUSD as far as some of the challenges that we're having and that we're now working on and is tied to when you actually get the formal bills for special education.
Yes. And I pretty much try to watch it daily to see what's coming. The California School Funding Coalition is very good about sending me updates.
I would also recommend that it's not just special education families. General education families are impacted in some cases significantly in the classroom by special ed funding, because we're not getting resources that are pulling the teacher away, or we're having to clear classrooms because we have some really challenging students. And so general education students are impacted with instructional minutes and so forth. So I would encourage the entire Albany community to write those letters, because it really does impact and benefit everyone.
I agree, and I think I'm not sure if you were here when I made the comments in Soup's comments, whether they're individual letters or they're emailed letters, or if a group writes a letter and puts 100 signatures on it, what I've learned is parents and staff have the strongest impact on our local legislators. So if you go to the, this is all televised, but it has all the listing of all of our local politicians. And you know, I hate to say this, but I wouldn't limit it to just our local politicians. I think, you know, Kim Trutane and I have been going to several of these meetings. I think we now know the route to Sacramento and back, about like the back of our hand. I sometimes wonder as I go through these experiences and learn more and more, if we should be writing legislators who are not necessarily in our area. Maybe we need to write to legislators who may not support this and have our advocacy. So I agree with you. I think everyone should be writing letters. Calling's good too.
One last thing, I want to thank Ms. Williams, Superintendent Williams. My understanding is you'll be coming to Albany Middle School on the 21st of this month to talk to general ed teachers, all teachers. I have a general ed credential too, about their concerns within their classroom for special needs. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. I invite board members to come along too. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to move on. We're running pretty late right now. I wonder if we can reverse the two review and discussion items. I see that Dr. Kane has been sitting in the audience patiently for quite a while now. And maybe we can go directly to the College and Career Access Partnership and then circle back to the adoption of elementary instructional materials. Is that okay with the rest of the board? Okay. So let's move on to the discussion of the College and Career Access Partnership.
Thank you, President Black, members of the board. I am really excited, and I think Ron Rosenbaum knows this. Every time I talk about this topic, I just light up because I always get excited when I can help create a program for students. So back in the winter of 2017, Dr. Kane came to me with an idea. Now, I sit on the board for the teacher assistant program at Berkeley City College, and so I've been working with Dr. Kane for the last, I think, almost 4 years now to train paraprofessionals with the hope of bringing them to Albany Unified. And she came to me with an idea that we think will benefit both Albany High School students as well as Berkeley City College, and also addresses one of the issues the board has brought up before around, can we create college and career pathways that are not necessarily the traditional ways that we have pathways for. And so we started talking. And this partnership is between Berkeley City College and Albany Unified, where we would be able to offer on the Albany High School campus for Albany students a dual enrollment program where students can receive Berkeley City College credit as well as high school elective credit. And I have to say, it took a very small group of people, maybe there were 6 of us. I think it took us 3 meetings, and we created the entire program. So I would say we kind of cut through the bureaucracy and actually created a program where high school students can take courses that allows them to get some classroom experience, some tutoring experience, and can actually, at least my vision is, that our students would graduate from high school. If they want to continue on at Berkeley City College to get their teacher assistant associate's degree, move on to a university, I think Cal State East Bay, to get their bachelor's degree and go right into a teacher credentialing program. And what Albany would do to support all along the way is hire them as paraprofessionals, provide them with student teaching experience and observation experience so that our high school students come back to us as teachers. It's a long-range plan. But what I'm also learning is that universities have their own processes as well, which is why we pulled the MOU, because Berkeley City College is part of the Peralta Community College District. And so there's a lot of working that has to happen on, I'll say, on the legal side, administrative side. But I've asked Dr. Kane to come and talk about the classes, the program. We all know Ron Rosenbaum. He is actually going to be our liaison between Berkeley City College and Albany Unified. And then I've asked Darren to come to talk about the whole dual enrollment piece, because these are the experts. And by the way, Darren was part of our team to make all this happen. So I really would like to turn this over to Dr. Kane and Darren and Ron, if you guys want to come up and Darren can answer all those wonderful questions.
So it's been a great process. I'm Ron Rosenbaum, and I have a new title, I think. I am the Student Services Specialist at Berkeley City College. And my role will be to help coordinate and do outreach to local high schools and school districts to help create pathways. We've spent a lot of time, but really got to it, and you can see the outcomes in your board packet. And this is our first project. Where should we do it? We should do it in Albany, of course. So Dr. Kane will be talking about what her program does. Dr. Kane.
Do I have to pull this way down? So Superintendent Williams and Albany Unified School District Board, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about Berkeley City College's education programs and the partnership that I hope to develop between the education program and Albany High School. So first, Berkeley City College has 2 education programs. They were approved by the state of California in 2012. One is a 1-year-long teacher's aid certificate program, and the other one is a 2-year elementary teacher education associate's degree for transfer. So these degrees are sometimes called ADTs, Associate Degree for Transfer, and sometimes they're called AATs, Associate of Arts for Transfer. Either way, the degree comes, obviously, with transfer units, and students who receive an AAT and have a 2.0 GPA or better are guaranteed acceptance into a CSU, where they can complete their BA and then apply to a credential program. So that's the existing programs that we have now. We just got approved to offer a school readiness certificate. And that certificate is designed for preschool teachers, and we're at the moment working on a school readiness AA degree that will help interested students prepare to teach transitional kindergarten. So as you know, and we've had some talk about it here, there's a huge shortage of teachers and especially teachers' aides across the state. In the past, when there have been a shortage of teachers, the state has generally just lowered their expectations, gotten rid of requirements, and if you had a pulse, they told you you were allowed to teach in the schools. And they realized that that didn't work out so well. So right now, the state is working very hard to develop programs that really prepare teachers and also teachers' aides. It realizes that we need to do 2 things to address the teacher shortage. One is to get young people interested in and passionate about teaching, and especially young people of color. And the second thing is we really need to prepare them to be great teachers and provide them with excellent training. So a Bay Area Community College Consortium formed a joint venture whose goal is to create teacher preparation pipelines at the community college level. My program already has a 2+2 partnership with Cal State East Bay. What I needed to more fully participate in the development of a true teacher prep pipeline was a 2x2x2 pipeline. I needed a high school to partner with. So, as an Albany resident and the wife of a former school board member and the former principal of Albany High, I turned to my favorite school district, Albany Unified. Superintendent Williams and I talked about offering dual enrollment to interested Albany High juniors and seniors. Our vision is that all the juniors and seniors that are interested in the program begin by taking one education course in the fall of 2018 and one education course in the spring of 2019. Both courses are part of the Teacher's Aid Certificate program. The first is Introduction to the Field of Education, which looks at education in the United States from a historical and sociological perspective. We also look at learning theories, how people process information, and how people construct knowledge. Then we look at how social factors such as race, gender, and socioeconomic status can affect learning. The second class is a field studies class in which students receive credit for volunteering in a public school. Superintendent Williams thought that the high school students in this class could be paraeducators at the elementary school level, which will address some of the problems that have already been talked about and address the paraprofessional shortage in the whole district. So the ultimate goal of our teacher preparation pipeline is to create an opportunity for Albany High School students to achieve what we call stackable degrees. We're hoping that they can begin a teacher's aide certificate here at the high school through dual enrollment, 16 units of which count towards an AAT degree in elementary teacher education at Berkeley City College. They can go to Berkeley City College to complete their certificate, and then they can continue on to complete their AAT degree. They can then go to a four-year college to get their bachelor's and then enter a credential program. Cal State East Bay now offers a paid internship to credential students who have a BA. So at this moment, students who have completed their BA but not their credential programs have an opportunity to get an actual real teaching job, which is a big incentive to the students going through the program. There are many pathways along the way. Students are not locked into one way of navigating the pipeline, but the goal is to get students interested in teaching and prepare them well as a means of addressing the teacher shortage we're facing, and also of offering early college credit opportunities to Albany High School students. Thank you.
And I'd like to add, it's free. It does not cost Albany Unified anything. What Dr. Kane is not telling you is that she wrote for and got 2 grants?
Yes.
2 grants for this pilot program. And I'm hoping that if this is a successful pilot program at Albany High, we can grow the program. I don't think we know at this point exactly what it would look like in the growth, but we're already talking about it. So I don't know, Darren, if you wanted to talk a little about how the dual enrollment works and how credits transfer, what a Berkeley City College unit equals to.
Yeah, sure. I'm back. I have a lot of hats around here. So what's the way we envision this is kind of our tentative plan is to offer this essentially like on Thursday after lunch, so it would approximately coincide with the 7th period at Albany High School. What's nice about it is that this is technically a BCC class being offered at the Albany High campus, but under the Ed Code provisions around dual enrollment, it allows our students a lot of flexibility around instructional minutes and things like that if they're enrolled in a program such as this. So this is actually a really wonderful opportunity for our students to get some additional exposure without having to worry about some of the specifics around minutes like we do with a lot of high school level courses. The units that students receive can be counted towards an Albany High School transcript if necessary, if students need those elective credits. I believe the math as we currently do it is 3 BCC credits is equivalent to 5 Albany High credits. I need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works out. Essentially, a semester of a BCC class counts as a semester of an Albany High class. So it's how we do it. So these units can be transferred onto the Albany High School transcript if needed for graduation, which is what we do with BCC courses. Either way, the student still holds on to the BCC units. So it's an opportunity to accrue units at a community college while still enrolled in high school. And this program, I mean, I've talked to Val about this, almost feels too good to be true, and it's made me anxious. But it offers us a lot of really wonderful opportunities, and I've already kind of tentatively talked to a few students who I know work with younger students about if this is something they would be interested in, and I've already seen some interest in this kind of program. And it would actually give our high school students the opportunity to work with younger students, which many of them are already doing, and then get elective credit in the process. And it would also allow us to provide a lot more support to our younger students.
Great.
So you can see this is really exciting, and you can see from our faces and from Val's face that we're really excited about moving forward. We have some brochures, and then we'll take questions. This is basically describes the program at Berkeley City College. Maybe we'll pass them down. And Loretta has provided us with the actual pathway at Berkeley City College, which you can see that our students would get the first 2 courses in the pathway at the high school and be able to work with our students. This is also the pathway for the teacher's aide certificate as well. So questions or comments?
I have one question real quick. Before we were told that we were not actually going to be discussing this MOU, I did read the whole damn thing. And there was...
Don't look at that.
There was some language in there about Albany High School teachers teaching this class. Is that something that might happen?
If they have the proper background, which you need to have a master's in field of education.
So then they would kind of have a joint appointment to BCC and Albany High?
Yeah, the BCC will pay the teacher's salary, so we won't impact at all the staffing at the high school. We're trying to make sure that the textbooks will be paid for. We promise that there'll be no cost to the district. And we talked about the MOU yesterday, so I'll just briefly, I know that Val's talked to the board about it. I asked her not to really talk too much about it because I was embarrassed by it. It really was a mistake on Peralta's. Peralta is bureaucratic like crazy, and we're trying to cut through that. So, and the typos, Loretta has got all the typos marked up and says, no, they can't say this, and that's a mistake, and that. But that's where we are. So the president and the vice president for instruction could not be here tonight. They wanted to be just to greet everyone, but they have a board meeting.
Oh, dear. Okay, any other questions, comments from the board? Charlie?
So thank you. This is really exciting. I think my only question is, besides the passive support you get from us from approving a MOU, is there something we can actively do that would support the program? Maybe it's too early to tell. You know, it's a work in progress, and maybe
I know for me, the most important thing you can do is try to help us recruit from the Albany students and get people interested in it. In my experience, once students, and also I'd like to address what President Black asked about the teaching of it too. So I teach Education 1, which is the first class that we're going to offer, and I teach that class at Berkeley City College. And once, students enroll in that class because they need some credits or something, but once you get them in that class, they fall in love with teaching and they get very passionate about it, and they, stay inspired through the whole program. So I think the most important part is just getting them in to the class. And I know Darren is definitely going to help us do that. But, spreading the word, talking it up, I think is the most important thing. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
Navin?
Yeah, if I may, I've talked to a lot of people in the senior class as well as people in younger grades, and a lot of them have actually expressed interest in becoming teachers and educators. And I think that, me and Mahima can definitely try to kind of bring this up with our student body and, let them know these opportunities available, because a lot of people are unaware of these opportunities, and a lot of students do want to pursue a path in education for different grade levels and stuff, but this would definitely be of interest to them, and I will absolutely, start spreading the word about this amazing program. So thank you.
Can I give you some more brochures that you could pass around?
Too, but, yeah.
I brought about 50.
Yeah, we have a stack.
Here's a stack.
Oh, you brought some too.
We have stacks of those.
I think it's important to note also that when I go out to Berkeley City College to recruit paras, It's her classes that I go to. So I do get to see the passion the kids have. And I think in the last couple of months, we've recruited 4 of your students to become paras in our district.
Great.
I'm not biased at all, but I think the level of teaching that happens in these classes is amazing, and just that it's the opportunity to work with the school district didn't come up until recently because of these grants, but it's just seeing people who wouldn't necessarily go into teaching or who don't have a passion, and seeing them take some of these classes and moving forward. This program was been developed over the years, mainly by Loretta, and what we're convincing her to do is, instead of teaching the course in the fall at the high school, at the community college, is to be the first teacher to teach it here at Albany High. I know that when enrollment happens, and she's supposed to have 35 students, and then there's 42 sitting on the floor every session. It's just, you've seen it, Val. So.
Thanks. Any others? Desiree?
Hi, so I just had, I think, 2 questions. So I heard that you mentioned a separate program that you may be also trying to incorporate later on. I know that the Peralta Community College has a diversity intern, program coordinator. So is it something along those lines, as far as when you say that you want more, you would like diversity? Of course, that's one of the things that are on there. So modeling after a program like that to get some of the students. I mean, you don't have to answer now, but just something like that, because that's something that's already established, and it seems like it's working well, and plus it's already through the same segue through the Berkeley City College. So that's my question with that. Then my other one is, will it eventually have something to where, like a summer bridge program? So maybe not so much, you could still have it during the regular school session, but also for summer credit, because maybe a junior or a senior or even a sophomore this summer transitioning into junior year may want to get exposed or something like that. So I don't know if you guys are doing that. And then my last question is about the criteria, or if there's going to be a criteria in order to actually be in it, because a lot of times, it's not, I'll give myself as an example. So when I was in a summer bridge program, of course it was through UC Davis, but they had a little bit of a criteria in order for you to be a part of the program. So a lot of us were actually first generation college students. So if that's one of the things, sometimes, I just wanted to ask, like, how you're going to go about doing it, because if you're trying to focus and narrow down a little bit on, students, either one, they want to become a teacher, or maybe they aren't as enthusiastic now, but once they get in there, like you were saying, then maybe they will change their mind. But just as long as there's not any academic barriers, like as part of the requirement in order for them to get in. So that was my other thing. So thanks.
Sure.
Please.
I just want to answer the first question. So the diversity internship in the Peralta system is actually recruiting a diverse group of people to be community college teachers. So it's not, so are you asking, would we use that as a kind of a model? We are going to try to do whatever we can to make sure that we are attracting a very diverse group. And that's one thing that I really love about my Education 1 class, which is the first class you need to take for the program, is that it attracts a very diverse group, not just racially, but in terms of age, in terms of all kinds of sexual orientations, just across the board. It's a very diverse group. So, that's our first priority. And to answer question 3, there is no academic barriers and lots of support for the students in the program. It's very much designed that way. So thank you for asking those questions. They're really good questions.
Thank you.
Did you want to answer question number 2 about the Summer Bridge program?
No, because I don't know the answer to that. But what I can say is I think that one of the goals that I think we all had is that we want this program to be very successful. And the way we know it's going to be successful is the kids who take the class will, if they like it, will spread the word. And then the program is going to grow. And then I think we can start talking about a Summer Bridge program, because I really like the point about if you're a sophomore and you're transitioning to junior, can you take a Summer Bridge program? I like the idea. I think it's something we can do. I really want to focus on this first-year pilot. We do it well, and we gain some enthusiasm in having more students, because the students are the ones who are going to be the ones telling each other, you got to take that class. I wanted to very quickly just give you a little bit of process. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here is where it gets a little complicated. The Peralta Community College District Board has to go through their process to create the MOU and to approve it. At the same time, I want to bring the MOU to this board so that you can look at it, approve it, or if there's any changes, edits that you'd like to make. The challenge is trying to get the two to harmonize so that one board doesn't approve something and then I just have to bring it to you and then it's sort of like a rubber stamp. I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to work with, I hope I pronounced the name right, Rowena Tamenang, thank you. She's the president of Berkeley City College, and we're trying to connect to see if we can work for them. They have a whole legal department that looks at it. We have to vet it as well. At the same time, we're right in the middle of kids signing up for classes and expressing interest in the classes. And Darren's talking to the counselors about telling students. So I want to make sure that this works, because what I don't want to do is create this beautiful program and then something happens and then it doesn't occur. So to me, that's a non-negotiable. We really need to make this program work. I think it benefits students. I have not heard anything that says that a student would not benefit from this or that this partnership would not work.
Right. I just want to second what you're saying, because the grant proposal that we wrote in that, that was going to be the work we were doing this first year. So I'm also hoping that everything goes smoothly and that we can really create this program. That was part of what what the grant money was given to us for, was the idea for this pilot program to flesh out the teacher prep pipeline.
I'm crossing my fingers, I'm hoping to bring the MOU to the next board meeting if I can. It really depends on probably what's happening at tonight's Peralta Community College District Board meeting. They're at the exact same time.
Jacob, did you want to say something? No? Navin?
Sorry, just for clarification, what is the MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding. It's like a contract.
Gotcha. No, it's good.
No,
Sorry,
good.
It's an we're all
acronym.
breaking the acronyms. It's a memorandum of understanding. It's sort of like a partnership contract between two entities that spells out what each side will do and what the program is about.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly thank you very much for putting all this work and effort into it. I'm 100% behind it, and hopefully we can implement it as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming down here and for putting this together. We're very excited about it.
Thank you.
Good. This brings us to what was number 1 and is now number 2, the adoption of elementary instructional materials, phonemic awareness, and decoding.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Marie Williams, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
Good evening. I invited 2 of our 3 teachers on special assignment, Misha Child and Rebecca Eros, to come and talk to you about the work that they have been doing over the past several years around building a balanced reading program. I tried to be as thorough as possible in the backup, but there is no substitute, I think, for hearing about the great work that's been happening directly from the teachers who have been putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to implement. So I'm going to give them the balance of my time so that they can provide you with some information. Thank you.
And it's sideways.
Oh, no. And that's an important slide, too. That shows our work. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Misha Child, and I've been teaching in Albany in June, it will be 20 years. 16 of those I was teaching 5th grade at Cornell Elementary School. In the last 4 years, I've been a teacher on special assignment, working as an instructional coach. And the part of this work that has energized me the most, that makes me the most proud, is how we TSAs have been part of a movement that helps keep teachers learning and collaboration front and center in any piloting and adoption and implementation process. And for many of those 16 years that I was teaching in the classroom, without TSA support, an adoption might look like this. I would get a box of curriculum, and in would come a consultant, and they would do maybe a half-day professional development, maybe a full day. And then they'd say, bye, good luck. And we, teachers, would dive on into the exhilarating and incredibly demanding and time-consuming work of teaching elementary students. And the staff that we have, the teachers we have in Albany and elsewhere too, are so skilled and dedicated that student needs in the moment always are at the top of the priority list. And so chapter 3 and the implementation guide of the teacher's manual never, ever makes it to the top of the list, and it justifiably so. And so some of the teaching learning that's embedded in the pedagogy of any curriculum gets lost because of that. But since Albany has had teachers on special assignment, we've been able to do some of that heavy lifting for classroom teachers so they can be focused on their teaching of students and instruction. And we can get that box and we can read that implementation guide and spend days and hours with it. And hopefully that happens in May or June, so then when the consultants come in, we can advise them to target their presentation to reflect more of what we know our teachers most need to implement that curriculum. And then after they go and teaching starts, we can do some of the problem solving and preparation for teachers so that their time and their collaboration together can be more focused on instruction and less on logistics. And what it might look like, I'm going to give you a couple made-up scenarios of one. When I first came on, we had just adopted the math curriculum. And sometimes the math curriculum would refer to things and nobody knew what they were talking about. And so on a Wednesday, a teacher collaboration Wednesday, 4 teachers and a grade level team might get together and somebody might say, lesson 8. What are those dots they're talking about? I've looked in the kit, I don't see any dots. And another teacher might say, yeah, and I looked online and it doesn't say anything. Because we are adopting great curriculum, but the curriculum doesn't always come with fabulous online support, to say the least. And so then a third teacher says, I looked in the closet, I couldn't find anything. And finally somebody's like, well, I looked on Pinterest and here's something that looks kind of like the dots, let's cut them out. And that's the whole Wednesday. And that is collaboration. They're working together. It is focused on instruction, but it's not really deeply talking about student needs. And so currently, thinking of the last year, year and a half now that we've adopted, since we've adopted the current writing program, hopefully if there were dots or something else missing, a teacher would say, hey, TSA, where's the dots? Or where's the paper we need for the table of contents? And instead, when they come together on their collaboration time, the conversation can sound more like, here's the language I've been using to talk about nonfiction elaboration strategies. Or here's the chart that I made to help the English learners remember the difference between cause and effect and compare and contrast. Or I'm having, I have this one student that's still struggling with structure. What have you guys been doing that's working for you? And so it's really focused on student need and deepening the conversation around instruction. And at this point, that's what I'm keeping my ears out, and that's my own assessment of how I'm doing my job. If the conversation is deep on instruction of students and looking at individual needs, then I'm doing my work well. And if it's starting to get to that, where's the paper for the table of contents, I need to dip in a little bit more and finesse that a bit.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Eros. I am the TSA at Ocean View. I'm relatively new both to the position and to the district. This is my second year as TSA, my fourth year in Albany, but my 19th year teaching. I've taught several other places, and so I bring kind of a wide variety of experiences here. And one of the things that I've really loved about Albany, it's the first place I've ever had a position like a TSA available to me as a teacher, and now I get to do that. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what I get to do is focusing on those learning conversations and really bringing a different perspective. As Misha said, as teachers, we very often get kind of drawn into the moment and the next part of the lesson. And teachers on special assignment can really help classroom teachers step back and remember the big picture, and really keep those deep learning conversations going from how do I teach this next writing lesson to what do I need to teach students about writing, not about this next piece. What is writing? How do people learn to do that? What are best practices? What are the phases, the learning progressions, and really kind of deepening those conversations. We really look at kind of research-based practices and looking at what are the teacher moves that make the biggest impact on our students, whether it's whole group teaching, targeted small groups around individual needs, one-on-one conferences, and moving that. And looking at this across a lesson, a day, a week, a unit, a year, elementary school. And these are the conversations that we've really been digging into a lot in elementary. As Misha said, we're on our second year of a writing adoption, which is one component of balanced literacy. Now we're getting into those conversations about reading, which gets us to this lovely diagram that we have. And these are all of the things that our elementary teachers teach our kids. We have them for 6 years, and these are all of the things that we do. And when we look at curriculum, there are a number of ways to approach it. We're leaving an era in which we get a packaged curriculum that purports to do everything. We will teach all of these components of reading with one lovely box, except the thing about those components is that they might do one or two of them well and really do the other ones not so well. And so the approach that Albany has taken through work of the TSAs and a huge amount of work of Curriculum Council over the last several years, which is representatives of every grade level from every elementary school in the district, to make decisions about curriculum, about practice, and we decided what's best for us, since there's no one package that's sufficient, is to pull the best pieces from these different strands. And what we're coming to today is really looking at just this one, phonological and phonemic awareness. which are the ability to break words into sounds, put sounds together into words. You've heard at other presentations about dyslexia legislation that's gone through. This is something that helps us address that, both as an instructional tool, including assessments to help us meet that mandate, and more importantly, to meet the needs of our students. It's a basic component of reading. And so one of the pieces that we're bringing, the Haggerty program, I forget its long official name, is one for kindergarten and first grade to really help them address those things. Phonemic awareness, that listening piece. Another one to get along, to move on to the coding is Rhyme Magic, which takes those same skills and moves them from the oral domain to print. So matching those sounds that students can now hear in words and matching them with text. And having that basic decoding is, again, an essential component. You'll be seeing us again. We're moving into next week, actually. We're reuniting our pilot committee that's been looking at reading comprehension curricula, and really looking at that kind of the final piece that puts it all together, which addresses vocabulary, and we'll make some decisions from there. And it's, one of the things that we've been able to do, these conversations have built over time, and are kind of a great combination. I think something that makes Albany really unique, certainly to any place else that I've taught, where teachers have so much voice and input into these decisions. Any place else I've been, I was just handed the thing and said, do it. So we're really excited to be able to make this move, kind of really help meet what our kids need, and what our teachers need, because giving them the best tools really helps them continue to be really effective. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We have questions from the board.
I just wanted to say that the reason I think that teachers have so much input into curriculum in Albany is because we have such great teachers, and you're the best ones to analyze this and to make these decisions. So I really appreciate the work that you have done in terms of, and creatively too, instead of deciding we're going to get one whole package, we're going to decide on this provider, you came to a decision that it was best to try to put this together. These people do this one thing in the right way, but somebody else does this other section better. So I want to acknowledge the work and the risk that you took by making that decision, and thank you.
Thank you. Albany teachers do not shy away from the work. We give ourselves more work sometimes in the decision-making process, but we go for it.
And it's been phenomenal, actually, working with teachers who have really kind of thrown themselves into this pilot process, because we've come back to them so many times over the last couple of years and said, okay, we know it's really good. Here's one more to try out. Let's see if this one is better. And they've all said, sure, what else do you have? Awesome. And it's been a privilege to really work with them.
Great. I'd like to editorialize for a moment and just say you articulated extremely well one of the great values of TSAs, and we are facing, budget problems and possible loss of funding for TSAs. And personally, I would just like the board to look at any way we can to keep the TSA program going, because I think it's tremendous importance. It feeds right into what happens in the classroom, and that's really what it's all about.
And especially thinking they're going to come, today we're here to get board, ask for board approval for a phonemic awareness and decoding program. And soon after will come with comprehension of vocabulary. And then later on in the spring, we'll talk about a phonics program. And teachers will really need support next year to be able to put this together and create a really amazing literacy program that helps support all readers. And I would hope that we would have the opportunity to support them in that way. I would also, and I'm not saying that just because I want this job, because I'm also excited to, when I do get the chance to go back in the classroom, I can't wait to do that. But I also, it almost feels irresponsible to adopt this knowing that there may not be support.
Great, thank you. Just a process question for the superintendent. This is under review and discussion tonight. We're not actually officially approving the curriculum. So is this coming back on consent or what?
Yes, so the materials will be available for public review for 30 days. So this item will come back either as a review and action or as a consent item at the May 8th meeting. And in the meantime, there will be a couple other items that come before you, which is relative to the rest of the program, which is why I thought it was really important for the TSAs to come and provide you with that foundation so that you didn't think I had lost my mind and wanting to spend all this money at the end of the year. So I just wanted to provide the frame for you and let you know a couple more items will come before you. They'll all be publicly available for review at the district office for 30 days, 30 calendar days, and then they will come back for subsequent board approval prior to the end of the year.
Okay, just you might not have an opinion yet, in which case that's fine, but do the board members have an opinion whether you want to see this as a review and action item or just bring it back on consent? Jacob?
I would say just bring it back in consent. They gave a very good presentation, and I trust that it's a good program.
Anyone else? Yeah, that's what I felt too. Desiree, did you want to say something?
I think my only question is, as a parent, whenever some of these things change, when you're not physically in the classroom, of course, or meaning you're not getting the lesson, and then you only may get bits and pieces. Sometimes too, whatever books and stuff the kids are learning from, they actually stay at the school, so they rarely come home. What of this program and or in the future, this could be really any type, but anything with a curriculum that would be extra or useful resource information for parents, just so that way the lesson actually carries over from the teacher in the classroom, and then that way the parent is actually able to engage and or get involved, or if the child does need more assistance, when you have that talk with the teacher, then you're able to say, oh, well, based on what you gave me, instead of waiting all the way until when you do talk with them, like if there's something that you can get like previous, at the beginning of the year to say, okay, well, yes, these are the bullet points that we're going over, but then here's, some more additional. So is that a part, of this is my question.
I think in terms of being able to provide information to families prior to the beginning of the school year about the new adoptions and about the different components and elements, I definitely think that there's an opportunity to do some front loading for families so that as students come home and are experiencing new curricula, parents can be an immediate partner in that process. I'm not sure if with these there's something online, but we certainly could gather resources and make them available if there's not something that automatically comes with the program. Thank you.
Thanks. Charlie?
So I'm happy to have this come back on consent, but since we won't see you next time, I'm going to ask a question. I wondered if you could just give us a flavor of what the classroom experience might be when you've adopted. Yeah, for these two, and what might that look like, and how might that be different than what you're doing today?
Both of these are designed to be quality curriculum that fit easily within an existing, more comprehension-based program, because these two areas tend to be the weaker areas in those boxed kits, or what teachers tend to focus on more is comprehension. And so with the phonemic awareness, it's a daily, about 3 to 5 minutes, I don't even think, 3 to 5 minutes, and it would be something like, it's all oral because it's phonemic, so it might be something like cat, say cat without k, and then the kids would say cat, and then it might say, there might be some blending or putting words together, so it's really fast. You can even do it kind of in your maybe cleaning up and you're saying it out loud. And then with the screenings that are part of our reading assessment plan, that's something else that probably will be coming to you in the near future. You'll know which students need it in a small group as opposed to in the large group. Okay. And that the phonemic awareness is one of children who struggle with phonemic awareness. Some children who struggle with phonemic awareness have dyslexia. Okay, so it's one of those determiners, possible determiners. Then with Rhyme Magic, a rhyme is a piece, like it's a piece of a word, almost like a syllable, but they're the ones that repeat over and over again. Like letter combinations. And so it's it's also very fast, but it's the same but with visual. So there'll be little pieces, on and in, on and in, on and in, but it's getting very, very fast with it. And then you start adding another syllable and another syllable and another syllable and breaking it, going back and forth. So it's again just a fast way of getting fluency, very rapid, early on, and first and second, and then for a small group for kids who need more support going up through 5th grade.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are running now almost a half an hour behind, and we're already scheduled to get out at 10. So if we can move on, that would be really good. Thank you very much for coming. We have a string of review and action items. I don't know how fast we'll get through them, but let's get started. The first is a resolution in support of school safety and gun control. It's on page 48 of your board packet.
Thank you, President Black. In light of the most recent school shootings that took place on February 14th at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, there's an increased interest in student-led engagement efforts. And I believe that as an educational institution, we in Albany do have a role to play in this democratic process. And I believe that our voice does matter. And I'm asking that this board join with other districts across the nation in passing a resolution. I do have it up on the screen. There were a couple of comments and suggestions that were made by members. Those are reflected in red. And I think if I can use this, okay. I'll be able to scroll down so you can see that this is the resolution. And there were, the changes were made in red. And I do believe there is one section, I think there was a cross out. If you look where it says, whereas the United States Congress, it's been a cross out and then a replacement. I'd open this up to the board.
Anybody?
I am very much in favor of this. I think we should accept this resolution, consider this a motion.
A second?
Okay, thank you. I just want to comment. I'm not opposed to the resolution. I'm a little bit concerned because there's a long list of things we're asking for, and most of them cost money. And it's quite possible that the state would say, yes, okay, do all of those, you have to pay for it. We really don't need another unfunded mandate. I do think these are all good things. I'm in favor of them, but I am a little bit worried about what, sometimes you need to be careful what you ask for. Other than that, We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of passing this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes. Next resolution, calling for support of AB 2808 to increase local control funding. No, that's not the right word. Local control funding?
For California Public Schools.
For California Public Schools. And not to be confused with the next resolution, which calls for full and fair funding of California's public schools. Maybe the superintendent could explain the difference between the two resolutions.
Okay, so the Murasuchi bill is calling for support of AB 2808, which is the Murasuchi bill, and this is to increase the base local control funding for California public schools. And while we know that the governor has funded the local control funding formula, it's back to 2007. And so what the Murasuchi bill is asking for is for the state to raise the base level of funding so that students, the per pupil that we would get from the state would increase. And I could probably read through all of this, but in terms of what this means is that we would be able to target for average daily attendance for kindergartners in grades 1 through 3 from approximately $6,800 to about $11,799. And there's also for grades 4 through 6 to raise the base funding from $6,947 to $11,975, grades 7 through 8, and then of course through high school. So what this resolution does is it supports the Murasuchi bill, and this is again an effort by many districts as well as the California School Funding Coalition to provide support for this. And in previous weeks, Kim Trutain and I have been to visit a lot of our local legislators to support this bill. This is good for kids. And I don't know if Alan wants to weigh in as a chief business official on how that would help us in Albany Unified, but any time that we can fund for students, the better it is.
Okay, for clarification, this is increasing the base grant, but every year there would be a cost adjustment above that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and to contrast with the other resolution we're going to look at, this one is specifying amounts that the base grant would increase by. The other one is just saying we need more money as a general rule, and it's not setting specific targets. Is that right?
No,
Yes.
the next one sets targets, but they're relative targets. Put us in the top 10 of all
Of the
states
nation,
funding, et
right,
cetera.
right.
And, I'll have two graphics in my second interim presentation that'll kind of help paint the two.
Okay. So, Kim.
Yeah, I just want to point out that if the governor's budget does come through with what he's promised, with fully funding the LCFF, then in terms of California law, they're done. They would only adjust us upward if our concentrations changed or according to inflation. So if California doesn't adopt a new goal, we're really going to lose out. And so this is, I think, why things are kind of coming to a head in this legislative session, because we have to reach, the second resolution, I think, is the more aspirational one, talking about, trying to get funding to match the average of other states by 2020 and be in the top 10 by 2025. That's sort of a relative and a more general goal. This one, as you said, is sets some specific goals for the next year, for the next school year.
So this proposal would add $1.2 billion in ongoing funding to the local control funding formula on top of the governor's $3 billion addition in the January budget.
Okay, I'm all in favor of it. I think that if it passed, the governor would almost certainly veto it because he'd consider it a budget buster. But I'm perfectly willing to pass the resolution. Charlie?
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to just go ahead and ask. I have to admit, I thought it was a little bit maybe not strategically wise to ask for something like a 68% increase. That you just, it didn't seem very likely. Whereas pushing for a more modest increase might actually produce an increase. But hey, why not?
Yeah, maybe we ask for 68% and get 30%. It'd still be even an increase.
Yeah, right.
Any other comments?
I will have sample letter on our website where parents and staff or anybody in the public can write to their legislators about this, support of this, this bill.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we pass resolution supporting AB 2808, the Mertz-Suchi bill.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now the resolution calling for full and fair funding.
Thank you, and I think since we've discussed this a lot, I'd just like to turn this over to the board. This is a resolution, again, calling for full and fair funding of California's public schools. And I guess the only editorial comment that I'd like to make is it would be really nice if we could actually get our state of California to get out of the 40s in terms of public education funding and get us into the top 10 states where we fund students the way we think we should be funding them.
I have one comment on this. I don't know if you put in my thing, did you scroll down? This was written by CSBA, and they have a tendency to be very wordy. And there are two paragraphs here where they talk about a ruling that they lost in the Supreme Court, and I just don't know why that's even in there. So my suggestion is just to remove those two paragraphs because they don't seem to help anything, and it just makes it longer. But other than that, I'm in favor of the resolution. Charlie?
Yeah, I agree.
Any more discussion? Resolution? Motion? Jacob?
Yeah, I'll make a resolution to approve Resolution 2017-18-17.
Perfect. Have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And President Black, just so you know that all of these resolutions, once we clean them up, we will be sending copies of these to all of our local legislators.
Okay, so next we have a public hearing to receive the Sunshine Negotiation Proposal from Albany's Teachers Association. I hereby open the public hearing.
Thank you, President Black. I'm going to turn this over to Cynthia Tia, who is our Director of Human Resources, for our Sunshine items. Mr. Tia?
So as you can see, the Albany Teachers Association sunshined Article 11, wages and salary, including related exhibits, Article 18, class size and specialist caseloads, and Article 28, working conditions.
Okay, any questions or comments on this? Any from the public? Yes?
Can we get a definition of what the working conditions are?
So working conditions cover a variety of things. There are probably, I don't know, 15 different sections. It covers whether or not there's a locked cupboard in the classroom. It could talk about whether or not there's an intercom system. So it's just about the conditions of their working area, I guess.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to accept the Sunshine Negotiation Proposal from the Albany Teachers Association?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the bookend to this is a public hearing to sunshine the negotiation proposal from Albany Unified School District. The public hearing is hereby open.
So in addition to the same 3 articles, the district will also be sunshining Article 16, hours of employment, and Article 25, calendar.
Okay, any comments or questions?
So is this the one, you just correct me if I'm wrong, the first meeting will be scheduled for sometime in April 2018, but it says that the current contract remains in effect through June 30th, 2019. So that's right. Could you just explain, because then it's like, for people who don't know.
Contracts typically go for 3 years, but every year, so full contracts where both parties can talk about all articles in the contract, come up every 3 years usually, and then every year both parties can sunshine a few different articles to talk about, so that to negotiate on.
So the contract would be amended for that year.
Yes, yes, certain articles are put in the spotlight to talk about.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve the Albany Unified School District's sunshine for the negotiation?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hey, we're 5
Great.
minutes ahead of schedule now.
I think we're closing the gap.
We're ahead.
Not sure about that. Yeah, well, maybe a minute. Okay, the second interim financial report.
Thank you, President Black and trustees. I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Alan Gard, to give us our second interim financial report. Mr. Gard.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams, and I will try to take the full 30 minutes. So this is the second interim report for 2017-18. The reason it's the second interim report is because it's a report that school districts have to provide. It's essentially a mid-year update. It's a requirement that began in 1991 due to the unforeseen financial struggles of a school district across in the state. So the state passed a law requiring 2 mid-year updates so that the state could be aware of any financial concerns. The major factor regarding school district budgets is the state budget, and so every year the state has a budget process. We're still in the middle phases of that process. The state is currently in negotiations, listening to members across the state on needs and priorities, and so the state has to adopt a budget by the end of June, but we have to develop a budget also by the end of June, so our budget is based on what the governor proposes in May. And so that's going to be a very important document, as that'll help determine what our revenues look like for the upcoming year and for future years. So this is the local control funding formula. This will help paint a picture of the Marisucci bill. So the local control funding formula, it began in 2013-14, but in 13-14, the state recognized that they did not have enough money to fully implement it that year. So they began a implementation process. They were not required to implement it by a certain time frame. They just had a target amount, and then we're working on closing that target amount, closing that gap based on new funding that they would receive. So The dotted lines represent the gap in funding, and the light blue bar represents the amount of funding that they use to close that gap. So the governor in January is proposing next year to fully implement local control funding formula, which means there would be no gap, and that is the main driver for some of these bills, because after this gap is fulfilled, then the only increase in funding would be based on inflation and consumer price index, COLA. So the Marisucci bill proposes that gap. It's off the charts. The reason it's off the charts is because the state currently has $60 billion allocated towards this formula, and it's proposing over $100 billion. So there's no time frame that the state would have to implement this, and it's really just based on each year the state at the time prioritizing closing the gap if this bill is approved. So it's good because it would show that there is a need for more funding for education, but this bill alone doesn't solve school district problems.
It's a bigger gap.
So this is K-12 funding per student going back to 1988. There is a faint blue line which is hovered around the inflation adjusted. And so the inflation adjusted funding for education essentially increased by less than 1% each year over the past 25 years. So that funding is severely inadequate, and it does not take into consideration the added costs that the state has passed down to school districts. And so that's the main driver for the full and fair funding, because this represents why we are still in the bottom 50% across the nation for funding for education, and this bill would, and the bill for full and fair funding would increase that so that we get out of this 1% increases each year.
I can also point out that Proposition 19, as worded, was a minimum that the state was supposed to fund schools, and it's been treated by the legislature as a maximum ever since.
Correct. So what's going to happen next year? I don't know. Why don't we know? So the reason we don't know is because the upcoming budget, state budget, is driven by the economy and tax collections that are coming next month. Those revenues will then determine what education funding will look like next year and over the next coming years. The governor proposed $1.8 billion in funding as one-time funding for education. And with the Marisucci bill, some or all of that could be folded into this formula and not as a lump sum basis. And so that could fluctuate what our budget looks like next year. And half of the state senators and all of the state assembly members are up for election in November, so there are a lot of promises that are being made. Some may not be education. So in the next few, a few months from now, we'll be bringing forward the 2018-19 budget, and so currently this is what that budget looks like. We still have a structural deficit due to the flattening of revenues projected because of the state, and then the increasing costs in retirement that has been passed down by the state. But we still have a positive budget right now. And so for tonight, I'm requesting the board to approve the second interim financial report with what's called a positive certification. And so a positive certification means that the school district has at least a 3% reserve in that second subsequent year. So for now, it's the 2019-20 year that we would have at least a 3% reserve. We have a 9% reserve, and so we have a positive certification. And so what's going to occur between now and June is there's local control accountability plan stakeholder meetings that are held this month and next month. The legislators are going to be making promises and seeing how they can work with the governor. And the governor is going to make his final budget revision in May, and from that we would then develop the LCAP and budget for board approval in June. That's it.
That's it. All right. Charlie?
Sure, why not? Thank you. It's a pleasure to look at a positive certification. It wasn't looking that good a few months ago, so it's really great to see that. You know, I'm just going to observe on the revenue side, certainly one of the most confusing things the state has done has been to create this base funding and then the gap and the percentage of the gap that's funded. And so although it sounds pretty good that this year only 48% of the gap was funded, next year 100% of the gap was funded, that gap has actually been getting smaller every year. And so it's not that big a change in our revenues between this year and next year. We're not really, you know, closing. You can see how the gap gets smaller because the base funding goes up. So the difference between 2017-18 revenues and 2018-19 revenues is not that big, even though we're cutting the gap.
Half of what was thrown at the gap in 2015-16. Yeah. And when we've now fully closed the gap, it's to the numbers that we thought we ought to get in 2013-14.
Yeah, exactly. So we're basically back where we were in 2007. So, and I guess another observation is that it's truly wonderful to see that we have a positive certification. Of course, as you flash through those slides there, you can see that by the time we get to June and we have to adopt a budget in June, then we'll be looking at the next 3-year period, where the third year will be a little under a 5% reserve. And so I think we have to keep in mind that even an ongoing cost of, like, just say a 1% increase, if it's ongoing, it perpetrates itself through 3 years, that's enough to tip us below the 3% reserve. So while this looks good, we know the budget is dynamic and it can easily go the wrong direction.
Yes, Kim.
So if we can go back to the chart that has the bars going off the top. Mm-hmm. There we go, yeah. So I just wanted to clarify, if the state did adopt the Maritsuchi bill or something close to it, having been around education for a long time, you would expect that what the state would then do would be just what they did in the past and only fund that gap, 12% here, 30% here, and then maybe zero if we came to a recession again. Mm-hmm. So it would just be a new slog up those steps.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I guess I kind of also wanted to ask about the Budget Committee, because we our target that the board set was the 9% reserve, and these numbers look like we're going to have about a 5% in 2021. So I just wanted to just sort of revisit the idea that we are going to hear something at another board meeting about the budget committee and continuing to look at those recommendations that came in through the process that was held, the community engagement process, and preparing for eventual cuts. It seems like we need to at least keep moving forward on that because there is a great deal unknown in the budget process.
Yes, the Budget Committee, if I remember at the previous board meeting, was that this is a board-appointed committee, and so Alan's working with folks on getting the committee together. I know right now we had the budget work group that was meeting.
Is it not continuing to meet?
I'm sorry?
Is it not continuing to meet? The budget work group was supposed to continue to meet.
Correct, but the last meeting was canceled mainly due to my shortcomings in putting that on the calendar and reminding people in an adequate fashion. So we would need to have the budget committee, have the budget work group meet again. And one of the things that would need to come to the board is bringing back the composition and purpose for the board-appointed budget committee so that we can then have clarity on who to look for and then begin reaching out.
Okay. Jacob?
Yeah, and in defense of Alan, also, you did send out an email, right? And a lot of people said they weren't able to make it that night. It wasn't just your oversight, right? Yeah, thank you for taking that. I saw I'm still on it too, and it looked like a lot of people just couldn't make it that night, and not enough people were going to be there to make the meeting, worth having. So
true.
Yeah, I thought maybe I should just double check. My recollection of where some of that stood was that we approved at least the concept of something like a 9-person board-appointed budget committee. And I think one of the things that the board asked was that you ask the present members of the working group, or whatever we're calling it at this point, if any of them had an interest in serving on the board-appointed committee, we should give them an opportunity to do so. Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it wouldn't just be that they would bring us recommendations as to who should be on the committee. They might poll themselves to provide a set of people who would be interested in being on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the other things that was tabled was further clarity on the purpose, the role of the budget committee, and are there different members for the 9-person committee, or would it be kind of a general at-large who is willing to commit the time to participate? And so that would need to go back to the board.
Right. Anything else?
Can I add one piece since this actually is on the agenda item? Just one more plug for the Murasuchi bill. Actually, they've postponed the hearing. It's called AB 2808 hearing and press conference, was rescheduled for early April. And so they've also extended the deadline for letters. Any parent, staff member, anybody in our community that wants to write letters on behalf of the Murasuchi bill, they've extended that deadline to March 21st. And I'm going to try really hard to get the sample letters up on our website along with our resolution if we can by tomorrow.
Great. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the 2017-18 second interim financial report.
So I move that we approve the 2017-18 second interim financial report.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to agenda items and matters introduced by the board.
Correct, and I have one item, that is the staff report from McGregor about alternative, continuation, small but necessary school information.
Or was there anything else?
I heard a request for more clarification of the numbers on special ed. So if ideally those can be broken out by, well, personally, I would like to see how many special ed days or hours are we short because we are not meeting a requirement, or we pulled someone from a classroom. We're not out of contract, say, but we have reduced the resources we had intended to have.
Right, so we don't need to add an agenda item since that's permanently on the agenda, but I agreed. I already actually put that on the issues bin. So we'll talk about how we're going to do that.
Well, and also, didn't we just talk about, there are some items that we need to discuss regarding budget committee?
Yes.
So do you want a budget?
It is going to come back to the board at some point. Let's check with Alan about when that's going to happen. Yes, thank you. Okay, anything else?
We have to sit here for 10 minutes.
I think that,
Wow.
we're going to adjourn. Thank you.
What a recovery.